Sarah Martinez wiped down the counter of Gate 23's coffee cart for what she thought would be the last time that Tuesday morning. Just another quiet shift at Denver International Airport, serving lattes to sleepy travelers. But when three masked men stormed through security screaming demands, something deep inside this unassuming barista awakened. Her hands didn't shake as she assessed the threat. Her breathing remained controlled, because what the hijackers didn't know was that before Sarah served coffee, she served her country as one of the most elite soldiers in the world. Today, her Delta Force training would save hundreds of innocent lives, and no one would ever see it coming. Sarah Martinez adjusted her apron and checked the espresso machine one more time. 5:30 in the morning at Denver International Airport meant the first wave of business travelers would soon descend on Gate 23, desperate for their caffeine fix before early flights. She'd been working this coffee cart for 8 months now, and the routine had become second nature. Steam milk, pull shots, smile politely, make small talk about delays and weather. It was a far cry from the adrenaline-fueled missions that once defined her life, but Sarah had chosen this quiet existence deliberately. The other vendors barely knew her story. To them, she was just Sarah, reliable, friendly, always early to work. They didn't know that before she mastered latte art, she'd mastered advanced combat tactics in some of the world's most dangerous locations. They didn't know that the steady hands that now crafted perfect foam hearts once diffused improvised explosive devices in Afghanistan. They didn't know that behind her warm smile lay the disciplined mind of a Delta Force operator who'd spent 6 years serving in the Army's most elite Special Operations Unit. Sarah had left that world behind after her final deployment. The weight of constant vigilance, the toll of missions she could never discuss, and the loss of teammates who'd become family had eventually broken something inside her. When her commanding officer offered her another contract, she'd respectfully declined. She wanted normal. She wanted peace. She wanted to serve people in a different way, one espresso at a time. Her military pension and savings gave her the freedom to choose simple work that didn't require security clearances or the ability to kill with her bare hands. The first customers began trickling in around 6 o'clock. A businessman in a wrinkled suit ordered a double-shot Americano, muttering about a presentation in Phoenix. A young mother with 2 toddlers needed decaf and patience while her children decided between chocolate milk and apple juice. Sarah served them all with genuine warmth, finding unexpected satisfaction in these small human connections. This was healing, she told herself. This was what normal people did with their lives. But even in this peaceful setting, certain habits died hard. Sarah's eyes automatically scanned every face, cataloged every piece of luggage, noted the positions of security cameras and exit routes. When she cleaned tables, she positioned herself to maintain visual contact with the main concourse. When she restocked supplies, she kept one ear tuned to the gate announcements and radio chatter from airport personnel. Old instincts never truly disappeared. They just learned to whisper instead of shout. The morning rush intensified as more gates opened and departure boards filled with destinations across the country. Sarah moved efficiently behind her counter, her movements economical and precise in ways that might seem natural to casual observers but reflected years of military training. Every motion served a purpose. Every glance gathered information. Even making coffee, she maintained the situational awareness that had kept her alive in hostile territories. Around 9:15, Sarah noticed 3 men lingering near the security checkpoint. They weren't unusual individually, just 3 travelers in casual clothes, each carrying a single backpack. But something about their positioning triggered her internal alarm system. They stood too far apart to be traveling together, yet their movements seemed coordinated. One kept checking his watch, while the other 2 maintained visual contact with different sections of the terminal. Their body language spoke of nervous energy barely contained beneath forced casualness. Sarah continued her work, but now every sense was heightened. She recognized the feeling, that electric tension that preceded combat operations. Her breathing automatically regulated itself into the controlled rhythm she'd learned in training. Her peripheral vision expanded. The familiar weight of responsibility settled on her shoulders, even though she told herself she was probably overreacting. These were likely just anxious passengers worried about missing their flights. Then the man nearest to her position received what appeared to be a text message. He glanced at his phone, nodded slightly toward his companions, and reached into his backpack. Sarah's blood turned to ice as she glimpsed the unmistakable outline of a weapon. In that instant, her world shifted completely. The peaceful coffee server disappeared, and something much more dangerous took her place. The three men moved simultaneously, producing firearms and beginning to shout demands that sent civilians scrambling for cover. Screams echoed through the terminal as travelers dove behind chairs and barriers. Airport security, caught off guard by the coordinated attack, struggled to respond effectively to multiple threats spread across the concourse. In the chaos, Sarah found herself facing a choice that would define everything that followed. She could duck behind her cart like everyone else, call for help, and hope that authorities could handle the situation before anyone got hurt. Or she could remember who she really was, who she'd always be, regardless of what uniform she wore or didn't wear. As passengers cowered around her and the hijackers began advancing through the terminal, Sarah Martinez made her decision. The Delta Force operator was coming out of retirement. Sarah's tactical assessment began automatically, her mind processing the threat environment with lethal efficiency. 3 hostiles, semi-automatic handguns, positioned to control the main exits and create maximum chaos. Approximately 200 civilians in immediate danger, with more arriving every minute as incoming flights continued to disembark. Airport security was present but overwhelmed, their training focused on screening rather than active combat situations. Local law enforcement response time would be at least 8 to 12 minutes, an eternity when lives hung in the balance. The nearest hijacker was advancing toward her position, using his weapon to herd terrified passengers into a central group. Sarah remained crouched behind her coffee cart, invisible to him but with a clear view of his movements. Her hands moved with practiced silence, inventorying the improvised weapons within reach. Boiling water in the espresso machine, kitchen knives for cutting pastries, a heavy metal pitcher that could become a projectile. Most importantly, the element of complete surprise. None of these men expected resistance from a coffee shop worker. Sarah controlled her breathing and waited for the optimal moment. The hijacker moved closer, shouting demands about government policies and threatening to execute hostages if his group's message wasn't broadcast nationwide. His attention focused entirely on the cowering civilians, never considering that danger might come from behind the humble coffee cart. When he stepped into her kill zone, Sarah moved with the fluid precision that had made her one of Delta Force's most effective operators. She rose silently, the metal pitcher already in motion before her opponent realized the threat. The improvised weapon struck him behind the left ear with devastating accuracy, and he dropped unconscious before his finger could find the trigger. Sarah caught his falling weapon, performed an immediate condition check, and turned her attention to the 2 remaining threats. The entire engagement had taken less than 3 seconds and occurred with such surgical precision that most witnesses didn't immediately understand what they'd seen. The second hijacker noticed his partner's disappearance and began moving towards Sarah's position, using passengers as human shields. Sarah evaluated angles of fire, civilian positions, and potential collateral damage with the cold calculation that had kept her team alive through countless hostile encounters. She needed to separate this threat from the innocent people around him, but direct confrontation would endanger too many lives. Instead, she used misdirection and superior positioning. Sarah moved laterally through the terminal, using structural columns and service counters for concealment while maintaining visual contact with her target. She created noise and movement at calculated intervals, drawing the hijacker away from the main group of hostages and toward an area with better tactical advantages. Her footsteps were silent, her breathing controlled, every movement designed to manipulate her opponent's decisions without him realizing he was being hunted by someone far more dangerous than he could imagine. When the moment came, Sarah struck with overwhelming violence. Of action. She emerged from concealment at point-blank range, neutralized the threat's weapon with a disarming technique that shattered his wrist, and rendered him unconscious with a blood choke that left no permanent damage. The entire sequence occurred so rapidly that nearby witnesses later struggled to explain exactly what they'd seen. One moment, a terrified hijacker was threatening innocent people. The next, he was unconscious on the ground while a coffee shop worker secured his weapon. The third hijacker, now isolated and facing an opponent he couldn't identify or understand, made the fatal mistake of hesitating. Sarah gave him no opportunity to recover. Using advanced movement techniques and superior marksmanship skills, she closed the distance while avoiding his desperate attempts to engage her. When she finally confronted him directly, the brief exchange demonstrated the vast difference between criminal desperation and military professionalism. Within moments, all three threats were neutralized and the terminal began to fill with the sound of approaching sirens. Airport security and law enforcement arrived to find an impossible scene. Three armed hijackers lay unconscious and secured, their weapons safely cleared and set aside. Nearly 200 civilians were unharmed, though still shaken by their ordeal. And standing calmly beside her coffee cart, hands raised in non-threatening compliance, was Sarah Martinez, airport employee, veteran, and hero. As investigators began piecing together witness statements and security footage, the truth gradually emerged. The unassuming woman who'd served them coffee countless times had single-handedly prevented what could have been a devastating terrorist attack. Her military background became public knowledge, but Sarah deflected most questions about her service record. She'd done what needed to be done, nothing more. When reporters asked about her heroic actions, she simply replied that she'd sworn an oath to protect innocent people, and that oath didn't expire when she left the military. The aftermath brought unwanted attention, job offers from security companies, and recognition from grateful officials. But Sarah returned to her coffee cart within a week, determined to maintain the quiet life she'd chosen. She'd proven to herself that when duty called, she could still answer. Now she was ready to continue serving her community in the way she'd found most meaningful, one cup of coffee at a time, with the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Sarah Martinez's story reminds us that heroes often hide in plain sight, serving our communities in ways both large and small. Her transition from elite military operator to neighborhood coffee server demonstrates that true service takes many forms, and the values we learn in uniform, courage, selflessness, and protection of others, continue to guide us throughout our lives. Whether responding to crisis or simply brightening someone's morning with a perfect latte, veterans continue serving long after their active duty ends. The men and women of our armed forces carry their training, dedication, and protective instincts with them wherever life takes them after service. They might be your neighbor, your coworker, or the person serving your coffee at the airport. If this story of hidden heroism and continued service inspired you, please subscribe for more incredible tales of military valor and the extraordinary, ordinary people who keep us safe. Honor our veterans not just on special days, but every day, by recognizing the strength and character they bring to every role they fill in civilian life.